Despite what one national publication might have you think, the Cincinnati Reds are not sellers. We're going to tell you why on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff, his name is Steve, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We've been podcasting about this team for a combined 14 seasons, and we're glad that you're alongside us here today. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And on today's show, we're going to tell you why the Mets are lining up the left-handed pitchers to face the Cincinnati Reds this weekend, and seems like a bit of a heat check. We'll discuss that in a little bit. Coming up in a few minutes, we really want to break down what the Reds need to do in this second half. What's the record need to be in these last 65 games to get to the playoffs? That's coming up in a few minutes. We will begin, though, with this article in The Athletic that says that the Reds are sellers and why they are wrong. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com right now. New users can get $150 in bonus bets with your first winning $5 bet. All right, Steve. An article from Chad Jennings and Tim Britton lists the Reds as a seller. Now, they had 7 different tiers. They broke every team in the major leagues up into 7 different tiers, and they had like aggressive buyers trending to the buy side, buy, sell, trending to the sell side, typical sellers, and then aggressive sellers. And they had the Reds in the typical sellers list, saying that they're not who they think they are.
Well, I know exactly who they are right now. They're 50-47. They're 3 games over 500. They're 2.5 games out of a wild card. This team is not a definite seller. This, sometimes we see this in spring. Sometimes we see this at the All-Star break when, the stories have already been written, the tales have been told, and there's still some column inches to fill before the games start back up. So comes along, guys, and this is not Rosenthal. This is not C. Trent. This is not people that, I would be like, wow, that's an interesting take from a guy we trust. No, that's not what's going on here. This team is definitely not a guaranteed seller. Now, there's a lot of reasons we're going to talk about the next segment about how the next week or so could change the whole trajectory of the trade deadline. But right now, they're absolutely not a seller. They're in a position to where if they add a bat, it helps this team more likely be a wild card team. If they add bullpen help, it helps this team be more of a wild card team. If they add both of those things, now they're really cooking with gas, and they're digging in on being a wild card team. So to just blanket label them almost a guaranteed seller, they didn't quite get them there, but they almost put them there. It just seems a little early to me for anybody to pull the plug on this team, and especially if you're someone that doesn't follow this team on a regular basis. I don't think you can pronounce them dead for the season already when they haven't even started playing games in the second half yet.
Now, I will say there are regular commenters that regularly pronounce them dead, but no, they are not dead. They are in a very good position to make a run these last 65 games. And I think it's interesting because this in tandem with a podcast that Brian Giesenslaw and Charlie Goldsmith did, talking about what does it necessarily mean for the Reds to be a buyer at the trade deadline, they really broke down. They're like, okay, here's the thing. Are the Reds trying to win a World Series, or are the Reds just trying to make the playoffs? And I would argue that they're just trying to make the playoffs right now. They're just trying to get into the dance because, quite frankly, that's all you need to do. Let's talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks from a couple years ago that just barely squeaked on in and made it all the way to the World Series. Like, this is not something where I think the Reds need to overhaul their roster in order to reach their goal. I outlined yesterday some of the moves that the Reds could make to become a bona fide wild card team, and it won't mortgage the future. It won't empty the farm system. And I think that for me is why I cannot buy them as a seller, because they have the ability to buy. They have the ability to add what they need to get over the hump, as it were, because it does feel like there's a bit of a glass ceiling right now that they're just not breaking through. but 1 or 2 trades is going to shatter that ceiling, and they're going to get to where they need to be, which is the playoffs.
You look at this article, Jeff, and they cite a lot of reasons why they think the Reds are going to be sellers. And one of the big ones that jumped out at me is one that they're not necessarily wrong about, in that the Reds have all of these players. They're major league veterans that have a lot of experience. They're on expiring deals. And a lot of times you see a team that, well, we're just going to blow it up, get what we can for these guys and try again next year. The thing is, the Reds are built this way on purpose. They're built with these expiring deals on purpose to limit the long-term financial commitments. And the reasons for that are many, from the fact that the Castellinis don't want to spend money to what I think, which is they structured this team to be a fresh start after whatever the new CBA is going to be. So you look at the Reds, and you can't look at the number of expiring contracts and say, well, clearly they're going to be sellers here because all of these expiring contracts. No, they did that on purpose. And it's not for a ability to flip the roster in July. It was for financial reasons for the Castellinis. So while I understand why they made the argument they made, I think the whole story is built on a faulty foundation, is what I'm saying, Jeff.
Well, they're using typical, like, these things that really trigger takes, right? There are certain things that trigger people to have a take without actually having to understand all of the details. When you see a guy that's on a contract year, it's obvious that guy is tradable. And honestly, I picked a few guys from that, but I considered the context whenever I was lining up the guys that the Reds should go for in a trade because of the teams that they play for. Right now, the Reds are so close because of guys like Nick Martinez and Taylor Rogers and Emilio Pagan and even Austin Hayes, as much as he's been injured. Like, those guys are the reason that they are currently there. And there's 1 or 2 more guys that they can add to that group to become the wild card team. You start trading guys from that, I hope it would be in a buy-sell, like a buy-sell type of move or sell-buy type of move. But I just don't know. Like, for me, the only guy that you're going to get anybody impactful out of is Nick Martinez. And that's just simply because the starting pitcher market is so thin. But the people that are buying on the starting pitcher market, the people who are aggressively buying on the starting pitcher market, are the Dodgers. And unless the Dodgers are offering you somebody who is close to the major leagues for Nick Martinez, I'm not interested. I'm not doing the Tyler Naquin thing where it's like, yeah, they got Hector Rodriguez and Jose Acuna, and boy, oh boy, they're going to be something here in a few years. We said that when they traded for them in 2022. We're saying that still now. The Reds are not in position to be acquiring people that are going to help them out in 2029. We need people that are going to help them out in 2025, and that's what they should be focused on.
Well, and you talk specifically about Nick Martinez. How do you fill those innings right now? You look around Major League roster, you look around AAA. You want to talk about a waving the white flag concession. You trade a starting pitcher right now, you are waving a white flag, because Chase Petty is the guy you got to put in the rotation. And we all know what that looks like right now. So,
Chase Petty's the guy you call up in 2022, not in 2025.
Right. I entertain the idea of trading like a Nick Martinez just from a standpoint of eliminating that salary to add back in more salary, right, to build the team, which, it's not that far fetched, but for that to have been a viable option, you really would have already needed Hunter Green to be back. You would have already needed to know whether or not Wade Miley is going to be able to put something together at all.
When are you getting Rhett Lauder?
Are you getting Rhett Lauder back? Which I don't think we are. So you look at all those pieces, and that Nick Martinez trade becomes more and more far-fetched. So while it makes sense on paper, again, and this is where the national guys get into trouble, right? Because that's what they're looking at. They're not watching the team. They're not watching the Cincinnati Reds. They're not paying attention to what the heck is going on in Louisville. So they're looking on the paper. They're looking at the roster and going, "Oh, look at this. Nick Martinez's contract expiring. It's $21 million. They could trade him. They're going to sell," right? Yeah. Like, no, they're not, because it's going to be ugly. They're not going to do that. So, it's fun when the Reds get the positive national coverage, right? You turn on MLB Network and you see the guys on MLB Network talking about Elly De La Cruz and how exciting this young core is. And we like that kind of stuff. But you have to remember that these national guys spend 5 minutes a day looking at everybody but the Dodgers, the Yankees, and a few others, right? So you get bad takes.
Their palate cleanser, yeah.
You get I don't want to say uninformed takes because I don't necessarily
No,
think
they
guys
are
just roll
informed.
out there. It's just they don't have the kind of time and ability to dig in and space to dig in on a team like the Reds. They're just trying to fill their space. They're trying to fill their column inches. They're trying to fill their airtime. So I'm not gonna overreact. I'm not gonna flip out about it, Jeff, but it's just plainly wrong.
No, I 100% agree. And I believe that the Reds are buyers. One of the biggest reasons why is, the second half, these 65 games, they've got to make a move because there is a clear goal, a number that they need to hit. And I'm not sure they can hit it as is. Tell you why coming up next. The second half gets underway tonight, and that means you got to head on over to FanDuel to make a couple of bucks off your baseball knowledge because the Reds right now are at plus 610 to make the playoffs. Yeah, that's trending in the wrong direction. Last time we talked about it, I think it was like plus 420 or something like that, but FanDuel now has it a plus 610, i.e. you put $10 on it and the Reds make the playoffs, you make another $61 on top of that. That seems to be slipping. I'm still taking it, though, and I'm still throwing a couple of bucks on this because I think the Reds are going to make a run. You should, too. Go on over to FanDuel.com, and if you place a wager on tonight's game, a nice little $5 wager, and it wins, and it's your first bet, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. It's over at FanDuel.com. There, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. If you're not an everydayer, make sure you hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app. With your subscription, you also get the Reds Postcast with Tim Daniel going live at the end of every ball game, and it'll be in your audio feed shortly thereafter. All right, Steve, we are getting into the final 65 games of the regular season, and I find it intriguing. I've talked with some folks about this, and they've asked me kind of what the number is. I've heard some folks say 35-30 feels right, but 35-30 gets you at 85 wins. I kind of think the Reds need 87 to get into the playoffs. Now, there's going to be a lot of folks that are just like, well, it's 2 games. Congrats. You're really, really focusing in on the micro here. But look, the Reds really barely missed the playoffs in 2023 because of a couple of games. And they need to make sure they get over that couple of game hump. And by doing that, they've got to add some people because I think there's going to be a stretch here. They play the second toughest strength of schedule the rest of the way that they are going to need reinforcements.
They are going to need reinforcements, and it's interesting you bring up 2023 because there are a lot of similarities between 2023 and now. Coming out of the All-Star break, they're in position to be contenders both of those years. If you recall, in 2023, they came out of that All-Star break and faced the Brewers and absolutely got their teeth kicked in. And it really just derailed everything, and it set the tone, and they never really recovered from it. They have a big opportunity here. See, they open up in New York tonight playing the Mets, 3-game series against the Mets, but then you go to Washington, a team that's 20 games under 500, a team that you should go in there and at least take 2 of 3 against. So there is an opportunity here if you apply our mantra of just win series to go 4-2 right out of the gate. That puts you at 5 games over 500. You're moving forward. You're doing the right things. They got to start hot, Jeff. That's really the key here. If we want them to be buyers, if we want them to go out and add pieces, and we do, and they should, then they have to get hot and they have to start hot. I need them to be 4-2 in this first road trip after the All-Star break.
I agree with that because these next 2 weeks are really important because we know that the Reds front office right now is still trying to decide exactly where they are. We're honestly trying to will it into existence that the Reds are buyers, but we know that they're evaluating these final 2 weeks to see if the deals that they have on the table are worth pulling the trigger on. So you've got to win. And to do that, the Nationals are really the only series that you say is quote unquote easy, and I get it. They're major leaguers.
Yeah, because that next homestand is scary, brother.
Oh,
that next homestand is rough.
That next homestand is the Rays, the Dodgers, and the Braves. And I get it. The Braves are under 500 and not fighting for a playoff spot this year, but I still don't buy that that's an easy series, especially because it ends in Bristol. And so you're going to have the weirdness of that, the fanfare of that. And so how do the Reds play in those first 2 games of that series before they head down to Tennessee? But ultimately, this next stretch of games is so important for them. And I'm with you. This road trip needs to start out 4-2. They need to go 2-1 here in Flushing, Queens. And they're facing 2 lefties against which we will kind of break down here in a minute. But for me, like what my biggest concern for this second half is where's the bullpen? Because we have seen a fall off. We've seen a fall off where Tony Santillan is still part of the A squad, but it feels like you got to squint really hard to see it. Graham Ashcraft has not made the step into the A squad that we thought he would be. And there's a lot of guys that are coin flips right now. Like I get like Taylor Rogers has nice numbers, but I'm not calling Taylor Rogers part of the A squad. And Scott Barlow pitches every day. But because of that, I'm really worried about what happens in these last 65 games because dude's already got 412 appearances on the year. So how does this all go for me? Like, that's where the Reds need the most reinforcements. Obviously, biggest need is the outfield and getting another bat in there. But I think this bullpen is going to fall apart, and it could fall apart in the next 2 weeks without help.
Well, and that stretch of schedule is going to play a big part of that because the starting rotation's a little nicked up. They're going to be going against quality teams. You know, Francona is going to have to start really.
He has to manage aggressively.
Manage aggressively. That's exactly what I was going to say, because you get out of Bristol and, you know, it gets a lot easier, Jeff. They go to Chicago and play the Cubs, who are leading the division. Then you get a little reprieve. You get to go to Pittsburgh. And you get a 4-game set against the Pirates that you really got to win 3 or 4 of.
You know how that goes.
And then they come back home to play the Phillies and the Brewers. It's kind of ugly out of the gate. Now, the thing that the Reds do, which, you know, the theme of this season, if they were going to get T-shirts made right now, is the theme of this season is, you could just quote, the most frustrating way possible, right? Well, this team, as part of that mantra, and, you know, you and I talked about this a little bit when we did Cincy 360 last week, talking with Austin Elmore, is that this team isn't consistent, but they seem to rise to the level or drop to the level of their competition. So you've got these series against the Dodgers, the Rays, the Phillies, the Cubs, all of these teams, the Brewers, of course, all of these teams that are playing good baseball. So our hope is the Reds are playing good baseball for a majority of this stretch because they're facing good teams. That has been their brand. I need them to play good baseball against these teams. But here's where that thing we've been asking of Francona, here's where that thing we've been asking of this Cincinnati Reds team really comes into play, because they can't afford to do that thing where they play to the level of the Pirates. They play to the level of the Nationals. They've got to win those series, and they've got to win those series handily, all the while battling the best teams of baseball right now. So it's a, you know, we're going to know everything we need to know really by the trade deadline. I'm fairly certain, Jeff, by the time we reach the end of July, we're going to know what's up.
Yeah, I made the joke, and I don't think I was necessarily 100% unserious about this, but I'm less worried with the Reds having the second toughest strength of schedule than if they were the Cubs and they have the easiest, at least according to, so, you know, win-loss record. The Cubs have the easiest schedule in all of Major League Baseball moving forward, and the Reds have the second toughest. So it's like, I don't know, like I feel like this has happened with this team a couple of years now, where we look at easy stretches of games and we say, time to make some hay, and they don't. And in worst case scenarios, they actually fall back. And it's just how they face these tough teams. Like, when they face teams that are above 500, they just do better. And I think that is going to be something here, well, especially how they've really improved against how they've really improved in games that are decided by 1 run. I mean, they're 11-12 right now. We haven't talked about how bad that record is because it's leveled out. It's doing the thing that it's supposed to do. And if they continue to do that with some other stuff, I really think we're going to see this team get to where it wants to be. But it's clear to me, like, what the Reds are facing and what they have right now is admirable, but they need reinforcements to get to where they want to be.
I want to touch real quick before we get out of this segment on that 85 win total, because I don't think 85 is going to get it done. I think you're right about that. So there's going to be a couple of these series they have to steal some extra wins in. There's going to be the unexpected sweep that comes along, right, Jeff? And they've got to continue to hang on to that moniker of never been swept, right? Like, got to continue to run that out there. So for me, this team does have the ability. This team does have itself positioned to be a major contender. We talked about in the first segment, we don't think they're sellers. We're talking about it now. The second half schedule is tough, but we think that actually favors them because of the way they play. It's time for Tito and these Cincinnati Reds to turn a corner, Jeff. They need to turn that corner right now, right out of the gate, tonight against the Mets. Let's go.
Let's go. And speaking of which, the Mets, this series, I feel like the Mets think they know what they've got against this Reds team because they've stacked the pitching lineup accordingly. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We're seriously on every single one of them out there. Check us out today. And tonight, after all the games are over, go to the Locked On MLB feed on YouTube and check out Locked On MLB Game Night, because they watch every single game, every single night, so that you don't have to. All right, Steve, we are beginning this series with the Mets, and kind of like you mentioned, they could be the most frustrating Reds possible and sweep the Mets and then go into Washington and lose 2 out of 3, which I don't know that I would hate that, but at the same time, that seems like what might happen. However, the Mets have said, we see you, Cincinnati. We know how you struggle. Here comes 2 lefties. They're starting tonight, Sean Manaea. They're starting on Sunday, David Robertson. And it's just going to be tough because this team does not have its best lineup on the field whenever they are facing a left-handed pitcher. And I'm sorry, it's David Peterson, not David Robertson.
Yeah, he plays for the Spurs, right? Or played for the Spurs.
David Robinson, and then you also have the reliever David Robinson. Yeah, too many. Yeah, whatever. Peterson.
So they're challenging the Reds. This is going to be a time where typically the Reds lineup struggles, and they can't afford to struggle because you've got those 2 guys going. You're absolutely right. It's going to force the Reds to it's going to force the Reds to play the not best version of itself. This is not going to be the best version of the Reds in the lineup. But then you look at what the potential of this Mets lineup is. And it's a little scary on paper when you look at it, because you take these New York Mets, Jeff. Oh boy, Juan Soto's OPS plus 96 games, 61% above league average right now. Okay, well, they've got that one guy that's going to get you, right? No, because Pete Alonso is right after him with 1 game more played at 97, tied for league lead. Thank you very much. 26 doubles on the year with an OPS plus of 160. So yeah, you heard me right. Their top 2 hitters in this lineup are both performing 60% better than league average. This lineup is scary, and it doesn't get a lot easier after that. McNeil's at 131. You drop in Lindor, who's having an off year at 126. Off year, 26% better than league average. Right. Nemo is at 25% better than league average. Jeff, their entire starting lineup they've got 8 guys right now, 7% or better than league average. 8 guys. You get all the way down to Jesse Winker, and you still at 104. This lineup is potent. It is dangerous. They are scary. They're setting the Reds up to really have to work for it. This is going to be a challenge. I by no means am I saying that these Cincinnati Reds are going to be able to come out of the gate and just kind of stroll through. This series is going to be tough.
And there's a reason. I mean, this team is fighting with the Phillies for first place in the NL East. They seem to flip-flop every other day. But this would be a very key moment for the Reds to hopefully get up on a team that at the end of the day might end up in the wild card race. There's a chance that the Reds could get up there with them. Although I feel like the Mets probably finish over 90 wins. So I don't see a situation where the Reds need a tiebreaker. But if I'm squinting really hard at these next 3 games, it's an advantage for the Mets because they're at home. It's an advantage for the Mets because they're throwing lefties. If I can squint really hard to find any advantage for the Reds, it's the fact that the Mets are slightly worse against left-handed pitching than they are against right-handed pitching, and the Reds have Lodolo and Abbott going in this series. And when you look at their 2 best hitters in Pete Alonso and Juan Soto also lead the National League in ground into double plays. So we're squinting really hard here, but those are some things that maybe, Nick Lodolo has been getting some ground balls, and, Nate Martinez has been getting some ground balls. So, there's not a lot of advantages here, though. These are going to be dogfights these next 3 days.
And so this is going to be one of those where you and I do, okay, it's time to predict. Well, A smart prediction is just avoid getting swept, right? That's the smart
Yeah.
prediction. So if the Reds can win 2 of 3, that's a steal in this series. And those are the kind of things that we need from them through the rest of July to really position themselves as buyers, to go out and give Nick Krall the confidence to go into Castellini's office and be like, boss, you got to give me a little flexibility. You got to give me a little wiggle room to make a thing happen. The Reds need to be winning games. So if they could steal this series against the Mets heading into the Nationals, that really creates that momentum. So by no means do I think the Reds just go out there on a 9 times out of 10 and win this series. I just need that one off. Let's steal one. Let's start it off by stealing one, Jeff. 2 of 3 from the Mets sets the momentum, put you in Washington with a way to see forward to adding.
And no bones, but I think if they go 4-2 on this road trip, there's a really good chance that they could come back into that Rays series next weekend with a move. Like if they go 4-2, it'd be easy for Nick Krall to go up to Bob and just be like, yo, dude, like, hey, we're rolling. Let's go. There's been a few small trades happen so far. Nothing crazy. A couple of different teams moving players around. So this could be the time. Like you go 4-2, you pull the trigger on getting an outfielder. You pull the trigger on bringing in a bullpen arm or something like that and kick off this trade deadline. They have shown enough aggressive moves. And I'm sure there's somebody in the comments section just like, yeah, guys are crazy. They ain't making no move. They've shown enough aggressiveness this year by hiring Terry Francona, by cutting Jamer Candelario, by calling up Chase Burns, that I don't believe they're going to sit on their hands. But they need to see the evidence that it's going to be worth being buyers. And they go 4-2 on this road trip. That's going to be the evidence they need.
I love it when Harry Carey shows up in the comment section. I don't know if that's what you're trying to do when you do that voice, but it always reminds me of Harry Carey.
It works. Yeah, that's something like that.
That's what I agree with you, Jeff. I think that this team is going to be exciting to watch. We're going to have a lot of fun conversations about this team in the second half. We're going to be continuing to monitor the rumors, bring it all back here. We're in trade deadline season, folks. So here's our commitment to you. We're going to be watching for the rumors, the news, the notes, the information. Like I always tell you, we're going to be dropping in special episodes. We'll go live if the Reds make a big move. You can count on us to be there for you and have you covered all along the way. Don't forget that Tim Daniel is back with us beginning tonight after each and every Reds game, doing the postcast, talking to you about what the Cincinnati Reds just did, what you just saw, what just happened, breaking it down for you. Lots and lots of great Reds content coming your way in the second half, folks. So if you made it this far and you haven't clicked the subscribe button, you haven't clicked that notification bell, just click them right now. Just go click them. Click, click, click. That easy. Done. If you can't watch us on YouTube, go on the road with us. We're on every single audio podcasting feed out there. Take us to the gym, take us in the car, take Jeff for a walk down by the river. He would love that. Make sure you have done all of those things because we want to be with you every step of the way talking Reds baseball. We're going to be back in your feeds on Monday, breaking down what we hope is a surprise series win against the New York Mets and getting you set for the trip down to the nation's capital as the Reds take on the Nationals. So make sure you've clicked those buttons. We're going to keep gathering up, as I said, the news, the notes, the reports, the rumors, the information. We'll bring it all right back here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
Break's over. Play ball.
Well, that was better than the Harry Carey voice.
I've got lots of different voices, precious.
Oh, no.